Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. We'll get back into our medicinal trees, and this is a unique one. It's an American native. You know, a lot of the herbs, a lot of the weeds, several of the trees and shrubs that are documented with use in herbal medicine were brought here from Europe or from Asia or from somewhere else, you know. It's always a challenge when we find a native plant that has medicinal use, because a lot of it doesn't have a lot of documentation. I mean, there's certainly exceptions to the rule. It's unique with trees because basically, you know, a pine tree in America has the same properties as a pine tree in France or something. An oak tree in England has the same properties as an oak tree in Canada. When we come down to uniquely American herbs, there's a really fascinating history of how these came into use in medicine. In probably the mid 1700s, there arose a school of herbalism in America that was called the Eclectic School. And people like James John Audubon, or is it John James Audubon? I don't remember. Audubon, the one that painted all the birds. He was part of it. There were several prominent figures at the time. Basically, they would learn the medicinal uses from whatever Native American tribe they were near. And then they'd go out and collect the plant and experiment with it and send samples and documentation back to Europe. And it was actually a very good way to make a living at the time. In Europe, they were, interested in new plants, new medicines. I mean, Audubon made a fortune just sending him pictures of birds and plants. I mean, they just really wanted to see things they couldn't see, but they were also very useful medicines. I mean, so many, like Joe Pyeweed, major game changer as far as a fever lower and its fever reducer and antiviral properties. Quinine, sassafras, so many of these native herbs, the ginseng, of course, golden seal, just really took off. Well, the eclectics kind of gave way to the Thompsonians and several other, what you would call more indigenous schools of American medicine. But really, when you get it down to it, it's that the reason they were called eclectic, it's the blending together of the European tradition with the New World tradition. And a lot of times when you find a purely native plant, like the one we're going to discuss now, Chianathus virginicus, means it was discovered in Virginia, known as fringe tree or old man's beard, really common where I live. You're not going to find any documentation on this in European medicine. So we start off on this one with King's American Dispensatory of 1898. I believe the only documented anything I found on it in British medicine was from Maud Grieve, writing in 1930s. Apparently it had kind of made its way to England, but she gave a very brief listing just saying it was a parient diuretic. Some authorities regard it as tonic and slightly narcotic. It has been used in typhoid, intermittent, and bilious fevers, it's really more malaria, and externally as a poultice for inflammations or wounds, and is useful in liver complaints. So you can see it's somewhat similar to quinine, somewhat similar to dogwood, tulip poplar, in that it was good for these fevers. Well, this is, always very important for us to know about these trees, because mosquito-borne illnesses are not a thing of the past, and they seem to be making a comeback. In fact, I don't know if it's conspiracy theory, I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like the Gates Foundation may be experimenting with genetically engineered mosquitoes, and we could be up for a whole new wave of new malaria, yellow fever type, encephalitis. What else is carried by mosquitoes? They carry some pretty bad stuff. So, anyway, let's look at fringe tree. And it's a real pretty tree. like I said, real common where I live. King's American Dispensatory tells us of actions, uses, and dosages. I'm going to try to pronounce this again. Chionanthus. Chionanthus. Acts principally upon the abdominal glandular organs and to some extent upon the venous system, relieving congestion. It is an alternative in the eclectic meaning of that term, while its main action is upon the visceral glands, especially the blood-making organs. Its influence is quite marked in other secretive or secreting structures. Besides its pronounced catalytic properties, it is diuretic, tonic, and said to be aperient and narcotic. It is exceedingly doubtful if the later statement be true, and its apparent property, if it possesses such, is the result of its cholagogue action. So, obviously we need to define some terms. These are old medical terms that aren't much in use anymore. So, aperient means it stimulated the bowels, essentially laxative, but more stimulating the contractions of the bowels. The what was the other one? Cholagogue. Cholagogue means it produces bile, increases bile. So King's Medical Dispensatory is saying that its effect upon the bowels is because it helps produce bile. So it's stimulating to the digestive system is really more the way we ought to look at it. Professor King, in former editions of the American Dispensatory, states that in bilious and typhoid fevers, as well as in obstinate intermittents, again, those are the intermittent malarial fevers, the infusion of the bark of the root is efficient. While the remedy is now but very little used, and this is in 1898, still some old school authors, as well as some trade catalogs, seem to have appropriated the above statements in regard to its use. So it was being used in patent medicine at the time. You know, the kind of thing you'd order from the catalog or pick up at the general store for probably constipation in this case. But it seems to be, I'm going to say, probably better for these types of fevers. It's something we really need to know about. They say it also proves a good local application in external inflammations, ulcers and wounds. So it can be used externally to reduce inflammation for ulcerous sores and wounds. The use of an infusion of the bark is directed. Still, it is doubtful whether such a preparation would be as efficient as an alcoholic form. That means a tincture. For the resin or the resinoid, the active constituent of the drug, is insoluble in water. So better to make a tincture of it with alcohol than a tea of it. It says that Goss, I guess that was a doctor, a researcher, whatever at the time, states that the infusion is wholly inert, meaning that the tea doesn't really work, but that that Chionanthus improves the appetite, aids digestion, promotes assimilation, that means, again, helps digestion, and is a tonic to the whole system. It never produces catharsis. That would be like intestinal cramping. Chionanthus has been successfully used in scrofula, that's an infected inflammation of the lymph nodes, syphilis, but now we possess better agents for this class of disease. Yet if the patient be sallow or yellow or has hepatic pains, means pains of the liver, this would be jaundice and pains of the liver, the remedy will prove a valuable accessory agent in hastening the cure. So they thought it was good combined with other herbs. For its prompt and efficient action in hepatic derangements, that's liver issues, we most value Fringe tree preparations. If there is any one true in specific medicine, it is that Chionanthus has a decidedly specific action on jaundice, so it was really quite good for the liver. The credit of having brought this remedy before the profession for the purposes of which it is now used belongs to the late Professor Goss. So that's Goss. He was a physician in Georgia, and a professor, I think, at the University of Georgia. So go Dogs! I went to UGA, by the way. I'm not going to bark at you, don't worry. He tested it on himself while suffering from an attack of jaundice and reported the result in an Eastern journal. Since then, it has come to be the first remedy thought of for this complaint. Gauss considered it to be the best remedy for all cases of jaundice, not dependent on gallstones. On the contrary, Professor Scudder was in high praise of it when even calculi are present. So he used it for gallstones. And they get into a little kind of more details we don't need to worry about too much, but specifically good for hypertrophy or shrinking of the liver. Not after long-term liver inflammation, it actually begins to harden and shrink, and that's when you're in trouble. Okay, that's cirrhosis, and they found it to be very good for hypertrophy of the liver, chronic hepatic inflammation, that would be inflammation of the liver, and portal congestion are speedily relieved by Chiananthus. The remedy acts quickly, often in 1 to 2 weeks, removing the jaundice, or what they call the ecteric hue. It's really very interesting. They said it was good for dyspepsia, which is indigestion, especially with hepatic complications, irritative states of the stomach from high living, irritated stomach from drinking too much, basically, and the use of alcoholic stimulants, exactly. And in general, chronic inflammatory conditions of the, what I say, duodenum, but now people say duodenum. That's not how I was taught. And the ductus. Chiananthus serves a useful purpose. It is often also a good remedy in infantile dyspepsia, so for infants. Good for rheumatic affections with soreness in the region of the liver and jaundice conditions. So it's a really good liver plant, as well as being good for apparently fevers and infections spread by mosquitoes. So, I mean, I think it's a really important one to know. It said it was good for chronic inflamed spleen, splenitis, and nephritis. It's going to be kidney issues, and they said those are conditions in which the fringe tree often proves a good remedy. Also good in pancreatic disease, inflammatory or otherwise, glandular diseases with evidence of imperfect waste, often calls for its administration. Yeah, I mean, really interesting. They said combined with we'll talk about gelsemium another day. I'm not going to give you this combination because, a drop too much gelsemium will kill a person. So this was really for a pharmacist, okay? But combined with a few other herbs, it was good for uterine leukorrhea and good as for external inflammations, ulcers and wounds, etc. Specific indication and uses, they say, for dirty, sallow skin with expressionless eyes and hepatic tenderness. Again, sore liver inflammation. And ecteric hue, which is going to be jaundice, with or without pain. Hepatic colic, intensive pain from liver to umbilicus. That means serious pain from your liver to your belly button, essentially. Attended with nausea and vomiting and great prostration. In other words, your liver's in real bad shape. Pain in the epigastrium and right hypochondrium, stimulating colic, sometimes extended to the abdomen, jaundice with itching skin. Yeah, your liver and skin are very closely related. A weakened liver will often show up in jaundiced skin or itching skin, eczema and psoriasis. Light-colored watery stools, colic, urine that stains the clothing yellow, really dark urine. Can also be an issue, a sign that your liver's not cleansing the blood all that well. Or it can be that, don't freak out if you have really dark urine. Many things can cause that. Many things, okay? Dehydration is usually the main thing. You may have a virus, and that can do it. If you've recently had a fever, the fever breaks, your body flushes a lot of toxins. Occasionally something you've eaten or drank can do it. But so don't freak out, but it can be a symptom.